Hi everyone, welcome to our event. This event is brought to you by DataTalks.Club, which is a community of people who love data. We have weekly events, and today is one of such events. If you want to find out more about the events we have, there is a link in the description, so go under the video, you will find it, just click on this and you'll see all the events we have in our pipeline. Very important thing, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, do it now. So there is this big red button. I think on YouTube, on Android, now it looks a bit different, at least on a tablet. But yeah, I'm sure you'll find it. And I recently checked statistics, and I think 50% of people watch these videos without subscribing. So you're missing out. And then, of course, we have a very cool Slack where you can hang out with other data enthusiasts. So there is also a link in the description. And finally, during today's interview, you can ask any question you want. There is a link in the live chat, it's pinned, so just click on this link, ask your question, and I will be covering these questions during the interview. Okay, that's the intro. So now I will open the questions we prepared, that you, Tomek, prepared. By the way, should I say Tomek or Tomasz? What do you prefer?
Whatever works for you.
Tomek is a bit easier to say, and I guess this is how I usually call you, right? So
you also called me sometimes Alfred.
Yeah, right. Okay.
We might share the story later on.
Should we start? Okay. So this week we'll talk about DataOps, and we have a special guest today, Tomasz. Tomasz, or Tomek, is a DataOps who lives in Poland, in Poznań. After working in product analytics, data engineering, data science, and machine learning, he fell in love with operations. And he finds peace in fixing poorly written IM roles and teaching people. So I really loved that line. So welcome, Tomek.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this kind of niche topic still. I hope after this, let's say, podcast or video vlog, it will become less niche because it deserves attention, in my opinion. Yours probably as well.
Yeah, indeed. I'm surprised that you worked in so many different roles, so probably we will start our interview with that. So before we go into our main topic of DataOps and becoming DataOps, let's start with your background. Can you tell us about your career journey so far?
Sure. If you count to the career, also the university time, then I studied econometrics, which is kind of exotic, or at least was back then. Then kind of accidentally, because a friend of mine shared the information with me that, yeah, this company, OLX, is actually hiring. Never heard of it. So by total accident, I joined the company as a machine learning trainee. But then I was working as a junior data engineer, then as a data scientist, and so on and so on. So basically, alongside all these roles and positions, I believe I touched a lot of, let's say, both positions and steps in that whole cycle of analyze data, create the model, publish the model, create it on prod, and yada yada yada. Yeah? So because I'm getting easily bored with stuff, I try to touch as much as possible and don't be an expert on one particular domain or one step only. So only building models or only doing the analysis. I wanted to know what the other folks are doing and why and how this connects to my own work. So that's why the scope was rather broad.
So you tried all these positions, all these roles while working at the same company at OLX?
Mostly. I didn't work only at OLX. I briefly worked at the Central Statistical Office in Poland to see how the government statistics look like. Also some like brief episode with university and some other companies and yada yada yada. Yeah? But mainly OLX.
And you mentioned that you got into OLX as ML trainee by accident. And I think many of our listeners or people who are watching this might be wondering what was this accident. So can you tell us more about that?
Sure, like by accident. I mentioned the accident because I haven't actually searched for like specifically like yeah, I definitely want to be into machine learning and stuff. I just received the link that said, hey, some company is hiring for the machine learning internship. I was like, why not? Why this might be a little bit awkward to some of the listeners, because right now machine learning is, well, hot topic. Back then, it's probably hard to believe, but at least in Poland, nobody heard of pretty much about machine learning. It was called back then multidimensional analysis at university. So you basically took the course like doing all the principal component analysis, classification, clustering, yada yada yada. But it wasn't called even machine learning. It was like multi-dimensional analysis because a lot of folks there were from the statistical background and they got just different naming convention, let's say. So that was the accident.
Yeah. So you worked as a machine learning trainee, then you worked as a junior data engineer, then you also worked as a data scientist, right? So can you tell us what you did? And like after working as a data scientist, you became interested in data ops and you became a data ops. But before you became a data ops engineer, or I don't know how to properly call this role. So before you started doing data ops, you were a data scientist. So maybe can you tell us what you were doing, what kind of tasks you had, what kind of responsibilities you had?
Sure. I was working mainly in the under motors customer unit because OLX got different units and so on and so. So I wasn't in the like core data science team, rather under the one of the business units. I was doing mainly behavioral analysis, so like analyzing clickstream data, trying to do some models on that, like to capture some interesting signals, trying to catch people who might perform action we actually are interested in, and like trying to grab them basically. Also, a little bit of product analytics alongside the work, plus obviously some operations, because that's how the DataOps journey started for me. Because a lot of people might believe that, well, if you are a data analyst or data engineer or data scientist, you don't need like a lot of operation skills. That's a little bit of misunderstanding, because even if you are working in data, because if you are a programmer, you are perfectly aware that they are like the SREs, DevOps, and stuff like that. In data, not really, but that might be a little bit of context story, but I guess it's relevant for the further discussion. So let's say you are a data engineer, and out of the sudden you start a new project, and you need to create a new S3 bucket or Kinesis stream or whatever. You believe that you won't be like deeply involved in that because there is a platform team or there is an infra team or whatever other team, like the central core stuff, and you go to them like, hey folks, I need a new S3 bucket, and they are like, that's cool. So here's the link to the repository, create the merge request, and we'll do the review like on priority because we like you. Then you're like, oh crap, I need to learn like Terraform, Terragrant, Atlantis, and obviously a cloud provider. Yeah. So that's about like not needing to learn operation skills. Or maybe as a data analyst, you also believe that I don't need that stuff. But then out of the sudden, you need to actually understand the data flow in the company. Why? because you prepared like awesome report, providing view on some part of the business unit. Results are pretty important. They are about to be shared to the leadership, and your boss asks you like the one really uncomfy question: how confident you are with the results? Because that's 10% drop in the revenue looks kind of suspicious. So maybe some ETL job failed, this and that. Maybe some server were basically down. Maybe there's an issue with tracking or stuff. Yeah. So then out of the sudden, you need to understand not only your part, but like the whole pipeline, or even as a data scientist. You might be thinking that, okay, my job ends pretty much at the level of Jupyter Notebook, and that's it. Then there will be some almighty big data team or like machine learning engineers who will take that stuff and put it on prod. Yes and no, because for instance, you created the model that prediction time is like 1 second. And products folks came to you that, okay, it's cool, but you need to go down to like 300 milliseconds. Oops. Or you create a model that is outputting, let's say, a list of cookies. And some folks from marketing are like, that's super cool, but we don't have any possible tool that is able to consume it. We can consume some rules. So now you realize that, okay, I created the model that is pretty much useless because the output format doesn't match. So those are pretty hard tasks. And it's pretty unexpected for a lot of folks because they are believing that there will be someone else who will be doing that. That's not necessarily true. And pretty much that's where the data ops come in, because people need help in that manner. And also that is a possibility for a huge misconception here, because some listeners might be thinking now that, okay, so now I finally get what data ops is about. This will be the person that, who will create the infrastructure for me, or who will do the maintenance for me. Not necessary. Data ops is the person who will help you to work effectively, who will help you to design the solution, who will basically make your work less scary. He will not do something like for you, he will teach you how to do it effectively.
So for you, the teaching was you needed, like in your story, you needed the bucket, you needed the Kinesis stream, and then you ask somebody for help, and then they said, we're busy, create a pull request, right? Or merge request, whatever. And you were
Basically
expecting
like
that these people would help you, but they kind of said, okay, just do it yourself, and then here is the repo you need to create a merge request for, right?
Sort of, but also to maybe defend a little bit the platform teams or the security or the SREs. They are not supposed. Let's say you are asking like the security team to like create a service role for you. It will be not very responsible from their side to like just throw out of the fence some ready-to-use stuff to someone who doesn't know how this thing is supposed to work. They should help you. They should do the review. They should guide you, but not necessarily like do the job like for you.
Okay, so you as in all these roles that you had over this time, like as a data engineer, as a data analyst, as a data scientist, in all these instances you needed to touch the infrastructure, right? And this is how you learned how to do this, and this is how you fell in love with doing all this stuff, right?
That's totally correct.
So when did you realize that you actually enjoy doing this stuff more than your work as a data scientist? How did it happen?
I'm glad that this question was stated because there are again a lot of misconceptions about which role in data is more important than the other role. So before answering the question directly, no role is more important than other role. And especially, you might be thinking that, do I need to have a data ops in the company? Answer is no. which might be surprising for some folks. It's not a mission critical role. It's rather a support. Or imagine that you are playing a game and you are going to the boss fight, and you are going to the particular boss fight with a broken sword and without potions. Is it doable? Yes. Will it be fun? Probably no. So DataOps is kind of that buff, that's fixed sword, that's plenty of potions and stuff like that. Yeah. So it's useful, but not necessarily mandatory. And now answering the question, maybe. Why? Because I wanted to solve problems, and it turns out, which kind of correlate with what Andrew Ng, if I'm pronouncing the surname correctly, kind of discovered or like is trying to make people aware of, is that the whole domain went recently from the model-centric approach to data-centric approach, which essentially mean that if you are doing work in some large company, and your job is not to create a model to explain the behavior of something and then forget about it, you are rather about creating the data product. And surprisingly, majority of the work in like creating the data product is in operations, is in like data, not modeling itself. So kind of naturally, because we were working on like data products, we're solving more and more of engineering problems, not necessarily the scientific ones. So that's how I fell in love in that stuff. But DataOps is not necessarily more important than data science. Actually, with Alexi, we both know a perfect example of that, because while I was transferring from data science to DataOps, we know one person who was doing actually the opposite. One SRE with like plenty of experience in operations was going like through the same bridge, but in opposite direction, from ops to data scientist. So like no career is worse or better than other. Yeah. So like, don't get us wrong.
And I think you said at the beginning that for you, doing something, the same thing for a long time is boring, because you want to do a lot of different things. And I think many people are like that, right?
That's also a factor.
Yeah. So not everyone, but some people are, that it's just too boring to keep doing the same thing all the time. And our colleague, for him, it was probably boring to do ops stuff all the time, right? And he wanted to try something else.
I guess so.
So for you, so you were doing data science, and then you realized that like you need to spend a lot of time doing this infra stuff, and this is where a lot of problems are. And to be, like you said, you love solving problems, and I guess you saw that there are a lot of problems with actually ops part, right? And then for you, the reason you became interested is because, like maybe I misunderstood you, but you felt like, okay, I'm more useful solving these problems, and I actually like doing this. That's why you started digging deeper into this. Okay. And we've been talking about DataOps for quite some time, or your transition to this, but we didn't actually discuss what DataOps is. So what is DataOps?
I love the explanation that was given on one of the talks in the DataTalks.Club with Chris, if I remember correctly, the grandfather of DataOps. Essentially, DataOps engineer or whoever is taking a look on how people work, not like doing the reports himself or herself, or like modeling, or like putting the models on prod, yada yada yada. He or she is looking at how people work where might be the inefficiencies, how to overcome them, and basically help people to produce the meaningful results faster, more pleasant way, less scary way, and stuff like that. So for me, that might be the shortest description possible, which is essentially the same stuff as DevOps are doing. And if you think about that, it's not a new concept. Like programmers knew that for some time. That's how DevOps came. But even before, Lean, Kaizen, Six Sigma, stuff like that, in like companies that are producing something physically, that was there, and the concepts are super similar. We are producing software, okay, but the philosophy is exactly the same. Emo.
Okay. But how is it related to infrastructure and all these things that we talked about? Because you said, okay, DataOps is about solving inefficiencies, helping people overcome problems. Then I don't know what was produce results faster, right? So how is it related to infrastructure?
Excellent question. Because like DataOps is not infra only. It's also like helping people write better SQL queries. As simple as that. Helping people in keeping the let's say the secrets stored in the proper locations and accessing them the proper way and stuff like that. But it turns out that a lot of confusion is actually about infra. Like, okay, how should I create the S3 bucket through that full GitOps? Yeah, so someone might be like, okay, let's try some example and just switch the names and try to apply that and see what will happen. But then Atlantis is returning you some error. Like, crap, I just broke the production. No, everything is okay. But for the first time, if someone never used like the GitOps to make some changes in the infra, it will be scary, honestly. So that's why it's rather a good idea to sit with that person, like literally on the Zoom call, and like go step by step. Do you know Terraform? No. So let's go. Do you know Telegram? No. And blah, blah, blah. And out of the sudden, all the errors, all the concepts became less like ambiguous and like for the specialists, like it's getting technology more familiar to like people, to give it more human face.
Yeah. So you mentioned GitOps creating a bucket through Atlantis, and maybe can you walk us through the process, like how exactly this process looks like? Maybe high level without going
Sure.
too technical, just for those who don't know. Well, I think I know a little bit. Maybe I will also check if I know how this thing actually works.
I guess you do. So essentially, you don't need any stuff like infrastructure as code, because that's what Terraform, Terragrant, and all that jazz is for, or CloudFormation if you're working with AWS. You can
What
as
is
well.
infrastructure as code? Maybe before we even go there, like for those
Good
who don't
question.
know.
So if you want to create something, you can as well go to your web browser, authenticate. And you can just click here and there and create some resources, some roles, some buckets, some Kinesis streams, stuff like that.
Just with your mouse, right?
Exactly.
In Amazon Web Interface, right?
But then imagine that you want to create one bucket on staging and one bucket on production. So you are doing essentially the same stuff with changing just a little bit of S3 bucket name or some tiny details. Yeah, so that's how a lot of smart folks in operations came to the conclusion that maybe if we'll define like all the configurations, all the infrastructure as code, not as clicking here and there, it will be more manageable. We can do some audits. we can do like all that stuff via match requests, which can be reviewed. And like everybody in the company will be able to create a match request as they see it. And then someone from like more infra teams will go there and like check your match request, but everybody can do so. That's the enablement. So essentially you are writing some Terraform, which is huge config file. Let's put it that way. TerraGrant is putting some variables to the Terraform code. And what Atlantis is doing is displaying all the changes that are about to be made in the pull request or the match request. When you can review what will be changed if the given procedure, let's say, would be applied. So it's kind of dry run. And then after like getting the approval from commissaries or whoever, you can just click on match or before that Atlantis apply, and the changes are made to the infrastructure. It's probably the kind of little bit technical still, but I guess
so
the
maybe
high level overview.
I'll try to summarize. So we have infrastructure is called tools, and Terraform is one of them. So with Terraform, we can create a config, and with this config, we create a bucket. We create, I don't know, this Kinesis stream that you mentioned as a config, right, as code. Right? And then typically without Git, what we would do is we would do something like Terraform apply on our computer, right? But with GitOps, the way we do it is instead of getting this code and running this locally, we create a branch, right? In this branch, we put this piece of code and then we create a pull request or a merge request, right? And then what Atlantis is doing, it's applying Terraform or trying to see what would happen if we apply this to our, I don't know, cloud account, right? And then somebody comes and sees, okay, you're like an SRE, some DevOps person comes, or DataOps, if you will, comes, sees that your code is not breaking anything, they accept the merge request, and then you merge, and then at the end of this process, you have a bucket and the Kinesis stream in your account, right? That's the
exactly
first.
like that. You mentioned something that I haven't, because essentially without GitOps, you will be, as Alexis said, you will be doing all that stuff from your laptop. So like you will have to have the proper Terraform version and all other tools. Now imagine some poor data analyst trying to install Terraform, configure that. Whoa, that will be painful.
Yeah, I think it was the biggest problem. So at ToilX, we thought that it's a good idea to ask data scientists to work on infrastructure, and for that they needed to clone this repository with Terraform, and then do Terraform apply, and then apply these changes to the cloud, right? And then the biggest problem was actually installing this and making sure you can apply, and then many people couldn't do this, right? Because it's just too difficult, and this is not what data scientists are trained to do typically, right? So this is not what we learn at university, right? But I guess for you, this part, you liked it, right? So you enjoyed doing this thing.
Yes, but to be a little bit more specific, I haven't enjoyed.
You didn't enjoy,
especially
okay.
It wasn't that much about like creating the infra. I haven't fallen in love in creating Terraform code. It was rather about helping people do it, like making them comfortable with that stuff. That was the let's say the main part of doing DataOps for me.
Okay, so one of the questions I wanted to ask you is how did you actually learn this thing? How did you become a DataOps? But I think from what I understood is you just simply had to do this, and then you would have a Zoom call with some sort of SRE or platform engineer who would guide you through this process, who would explain you what Terraform is, what other things are, how exactly you need to create this merge request to get your S3 bucket, and this is how you learned, right?
More or less, yes. But also to like maybe to make the process easier, if I would start again learning the same stuff, I would definitely narrow the scope, because if you're asking some DevOps engineer like, okay, I want to be more into operation stuff, like what should I learn? Linux, then some cloud provider, then Docker, Kubernetes, and yada yada yada. I was like, okay, so after 5 years, I will maybe become useful finally, which is like kind of misunderstanding, Emo. Because if you are working in the data space, AWS got what, probably like 200 plus different services.
Maybe more.
Scan the list, and then answer yourself if you will be like spawning some fleet of IoT robots. I have doubts. If you will be working on the quantum computing, I have doubts. If you will be working on the ground stations, probably not. And after that pre-filtering, you came to the conclusion that, okay, I need really the IAM roles, EC2 machines, S3 buckets, Kinesis maybe, EMR. So out of 200 services, you will learn that, okay, I actually need 20 of them. So that narrows the scope a bit. Good example of the possible roadmap could be the roadmap.sh/DevOps probably. It's pretty accurate also for the data domain. But I would say good enough is quite okay. So you then have to spend like 5 years in some kind of basement, constantly training, learning, and then finally you became like the useful guy. Not necessary. Every single team, like security, SREs, platform team, whoever, got their list of like least favorite tasks. For SREs, it might be like, okay, every single resource need to be tagged with like name equals something, the owner equals something, the on-call guy equals something, and every single resource needs to be tagged. This is the sort of the task that nobody likes to do. So if you are a junior in the operations domain, you're basically going there and asking for the kind of rookie tasks, and they will be super helpful to give you that. Alongside of doing so, you will learn a ton, and everybody will basically love you because you are taking the crappiest work possible out of them, and at the same time you are actually learning. So it's a win-win situation. Or like, let's say, a security team. They might have problems with like, hey, folks are using like privileged mode in the Kubernetes runners, like Docker, it's kind of not okay. So you have to identify all such cases and like go team by team and explain to them how Kaniko works. So it's also a completely rookie task. You will learn a ton of while doing so. You will know better the people you will be working with. And again, it's a win-win situation. So establish the connections, make people from the technical teams know about you. Plus teach others, obviously. And also start simple. You don't have to start from administrating the Kubernetes cluster. You can just build the Docker image on your laptop, then push it to some registry, then push it to the different registry. Like first time to the maybe GitLab registry, then to ECR. Then try to apply some security scanning. Then create that on the CI pipeline instead of your laptop. Then add some steps and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And out of making some little steps, you will finally like go to the more or less the end of the path into that particular task. One last piece of advice on the learning process: accept that it will be uncomfy. If you are from the data domain, you are probably closer to the PhD in stats than to the Linux admin. So now, out of being like senior data scientist or super powerful machine learning engineer or whoever, you are going to some very different domain. So it will be like forcing a weightlifter to do cardio training. It's a different specialty. So it will be uncomfy, and it doesn't mean that you are, I don't know, unqualified or the worst case stupid or whoever. Yeah, it's just a different domain. It will be tough. You got some folks out there to support you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Speaking of that, so right now we have a machine learning engineering course, and we are currently covering the deployment module. Mm-hmm. And so far, for many students, up to week 5, we're on week 5 right now, it was fine because it was Jupyter Notebook. But now, all of a sudden, from this convenient, comfortable environment of a Jupyter Notebook, we end up doing things in the terminal. And for you, I have a question. So you have, I think you studied econometrics, right? You mentioned that. Then you worked as a data scientist. And I guess this Linux admin stuff wasn't something you like life prepared you to do, right? So how did you learn this thing? So how did it become comfortable for you to work in this environment?
Honestly, by doing every possible mistake that was about to be done. I know this might sound stupid, but that's how it was. But what may help you in like feeling more comfortable with the command line is to do the proper setup. If you look at the terminals of some series or something, they will have like plenty of that sort of jazz, and that's for the good reason. It probably doesn't have like auto completion, the syntax highlighting.
I think, I don't know if it's just me or everyone, but we lost a part of, at least I lost a part of this, so just to make sure we get it. So you said talk to SRE who already has proper setup in the terminal, and then I lost it.
And ask them basically what they have installed and what for, because honestly, terminal without auto completion, without syntax highlighting, without proper bash RC, it's not a comfy place. So with the proper bash RC setup, it will be much more friendly. You will see immediately the possible mistakes. Commands will autocomplete. It will be just better.
Okay, what if I don't have an SRE who already configured bash RC and can just share this information for me? What is the best place to look this kind of information?
I'm super glad you asked this because my answer in that for that kind of questions is always the same. There's a place called YouTube, which is awesome.
I thought you would say Google.
Nah, Google is well. It's also awesome because you got like articles on Hacker News, Medium, whatever. But it may happen that someone on YouTube already created like full-blown video about how to configure, let's say, the OMI ZSH or anything about that. So basically, type command line tutorial course setup, whatever, and I bet you $50 that there will be something in the first 10 results.
Yeah, I think I saw a couple of videos like that that are 1 hour long. Some of them are even longer that show you how to set up your environment from nothing, from a clean Windows, Mac OS, Linux, whatever you use. Like I saw a video with Windows because 1 year ago I switched from Ubuntu to Windows and I needed to prepare the environment for that. And of course, for me, everything was alien. And I found a tutorial that just walked me through the entire thing, like how should I set up a terminal. And then at the end, it was like, usual Linux. So yeah, just that single video. I unfortunately don't remember that video, but yeah, it wasn't difficult. I think it was one of the top results.
Well, people just love to create videos,
Mhm.
and there's a high chance that someone already created something for exactly your case, like how to set up Kubernetes cluster from scratch, or the full course about how to prepare for AWS Solutions Architect certificate. There you go, like for free on basically YouTube, like the most common place to search for the cat pictures, or actually movies. Pictures.
Yeah, we have a few questions, and two of these questions they ask about the overlap between data ops and data engineering. What is in your opinion, the overlap? Is there any overlap, and if there is, what is it?
Between DataOps and data engineering, emo data engineer will be more operational, like meaning he or she will be actually doing some pipelines, preparing some quality checks or whatever. DataOps will honestly, if I remember correctly, my statistics from Google Calendar when I was working as a DataOps in OLX, it was like 25 hours average per week on Zoom calls. So data engineer will probably spend more time actually in PyCharm, and DataOps will spend more time on Slack and Zoom. Emo.
Okay,
Because
and these Zoom calls, like what we were doing exactly? Like helping others, I guess, with problems.
exactly, most often, honestly, live coding, designing some solutions. Because if you think about like which domains maybe DataOps touch, it's essentially past, meaning absorbing the technical depth, the present, meaning handling the user's requests, like the daily problems, and you're also thinking about the future. So like maybe you just prepare the kind of summary of how the past month went. Okay, so most people have had problems with some service roles for the GitLab runners, because like they have to go like to 12 different repositories. So now you are talking with the SREs that guys, we might want to simplify that, because there's a like yet again there's a problem with like this process being like too complicated. So maybe we should do something about this. And also you're educating people. So imagine you got like newcomers to the company, like someone have been onboarded by HR, but HR can onboard you about like what are the teams, what are the structure, who will your boss be, where you can ask for this or that. But the technical one, the technical onboarding will be probably on the shoulders of data ops. And it's also your job then to catch the newcomers to the company and like make them comfortable.
Okay.
So I don't know
So
if that answers the question, but
yeah, so maybe I'll try to summarize. So data engineers actually work in the PyCharms, VS Code, and so on, but data ops mostly use Zoom and Slack and other things. That is how, like for me, that was the summary. But I guess there is more to that. So there is mostly like support, also from at least with SREs that I see my colleagues, they always have something open, like some sort of dashboard or something like this. So they not
Grafana.
only Grafana, exactly, or New Relic. So not only they help people who come with ad hoc requests to them, but also they see, okay, yeah, something is off here. Let me take a
They're
look
trying
what's
to be
inside.
proactive.
Yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. And so you said you spent quite a lot of, or like when you in this position, you spent a lot of time doing live coding, supporting education. So it means, from what I understood, you already need to be quite experienced person to work as a DataOps. And do you need to be a data engineer in the past to be successful in this role, or what kind of background is actually useful for this role, or not useful, but how to say, suitable?
Any background in any data position, emo,
Any.
like any, whether you were like senior analyst, senior data engineer, senior data scientist, whoever, it will be useful. Why? Because you don't have to be an expert. You will be serving as a middleman between, let's say, the platform team, the security team, the SRE team, and the users, meaning like data analysts, engineers, scientists. So majority of the cases are literally not that hard. So it's like more than enough to like be able to read the log and try to figure it out what is actually happening. You were actually working previously as a Java developer, if I remember correctly. So you definitely know how verbose the error messages
Very.
and the logs
But Python
can
is
be.
not different. Yeah, it's sometimes even worse.
Which basically mean that if you are able to help people understand the logs, if you can help them understand how the cross-account roles will work in AWS, it's more than enough. You don't have to be like super expert, meaning if you will out of the sudden need to like set up DNS records here and there will be some SRE who will be super glad that you are asking him or her about that technical questions, because SREs like technical questions. They typically don't they're not super thrilled to explain someone like over and over again how assuming roles work. They are more thrilled about some really complex issue in Kubernetes cluster. That's keep them up and running. And you are taking that, let's say, unpleasant or less favorite part from them, leaving them with the more technical side, which is like, again, a win-win for both sides.
Yeah. So how does the sim role work? Okay, you don't have to explain that.
No
I
worries,
guess
it's
you
actually
did a fair amount of explanation already, right?
a little bit, yes.
So
So
you wanted to actually answer that, or
we can, but
maybe it's
anybody
too boring.
will find a better explanation than I will do now on some YouTube channel, probably. So I guess it's a good place to start.
Okay. Yeah, there are a few things I still want to ask you. So we talked a bit about skills, and there is actually a comment. So what you said, because there is 200 or even more services in AWS, you don't need to use all of them. And then somebody commented that this is the Pareto principle applied to AWS services. But still, like apart from these services that you mentioned, like IAM roles, EC2, S3, EMR, we also have Docker, we also have Kubernetes, we also have CI/CD tools, we also have this Prometheus, Grafana, and I even haven't started, mentioning data-specific tools, right? These are all like general software engineering tools, right? General SRE, DevOps tools. So, like, how to to actually start learning all that? Do you have any suggestions, like how to, like, what are the minimal operational skills that I need to have to be able to work in this role?
If they have to be minimal, then it has to be a really narrow set. A little bit of context. I've read some time ago an excellent article. It was, I believe, called Good Enough Practices in Scientific Computing or something like that. When someone went through like all the best practices they advise the best practices or the best set of tools to someone, and then after some weeks checked if that list and that training actually changed anything. Answer was only partially, because if you introduce someone to like all the best and in class, it might be complicated. So if someone never worked with any version control system, let's start with Dropbox, honestly. If you are still keeping passwords in some passwords.txt, password manager, please. YubiKey, maybe, but start with password manager, honestly. Command line, like if you will set up properly the command line, then it will make your work and your life basically so much easier. And if you will be working then with some DataOps, DevOps, SRE, whoever, he or she will be also like super happy, because they will not spend time trying to figure it out. What have you done in your command line? They will recognize the common stuff that they already know, meaning like you are somehow experienced already, which will be then easier for them to diagnose the real problems here and there. So I would say the minimal operation skills for everybody, whether this will be like DataOps or just data analyst or whoever. Version control system, probably Git, command line. To some extent, it will be enough to just know how to move between the directories, how to grab something, how to cut something, how to assume the role in the AWS CLI. Pretty much it, plus password manager, plus, as I said, IAM roles, which essentially means IAM. Why I'm like stressing that IAM part over and over again? Because like, honestly, 90% of the errors are like about access denied. And being able to run AWS STS get caller identity to know at which role I'm currently in is super powerful and super simple at the same time. And just drawing the different, like, okay, this role can be assumed from that role, and that role can be from that role. Just writing that down on some piece of paper, creating some dots.
I think we lost you again. Or maybe it's something with me. I don't know. I hope it's not me. Yeah, I think it's Tomasz also froze on YouTube. Yeah, I hope he recovers the connection. So. Okay, we actually lost Tomasz, so I hope he will be able to rejoin us now. Yeah, he's gone indeed. So I'm wondering how to keep you entertained while he's joining. Yeah, so Adonis, you mentioned that it sounds like kind of a manager for data, and this is exactly what I was thinking about. That it sounds very similar to a management role. All this education, all this calls in Zoom, figuring out what the process should look like, all the support. It does look like management. Okay, now I'm starting to worry a little bit. So I hope the connection will be back for Tomasz. Okay, I think it's the first time it actually happens in a stream. Okay, you're back. Are you back?
Okay, phew. I just created a hotspot from my telephone. Sorry for that.
Okay. Yeah, internet life happens. Okay, yeah, so you were talking about assume role, how assume roles, and then how you can just drawing different roles and how one can assume another, how immensely it helps to figure out what the problem is.
Okay, so actually all the content stayed in the in the call.
Yeah, and while you were away, I was trying to keep people on the call entertained. And so one thing Adonis mentioned that, so what we talked about largely sounded like a data management role. So all these Zoom calls, all this support in Slack, all this trying to, I don't know, live code with somebody. From what I see, managers also often do it, especially with somebody who's, let's say, less senior. So they often do it with juniors, with maybe middle level people, like all this kind of work. So what would be the difference? What is the difference between a data ops person and a data manager person? Somebody who is mentoring people.
That will be quite simple to explain, because usually data managers has their own team, like the fixed set of like 5 or 6 or 10 or whatever of some folks, and you as a data ops will be working like across different teams, across different business units, whatever. Yeah. So you will be observing some Slack channel, like data support something, and that will be pretty much for everybody. You will definitely have some splits if you are not the only one doing data ops in the company. So someone will take the request from that business unit, someone will take from other business unit, but essentially you will be working with the larger number of people, like not only the fixed set of like 5 or 6. So data manager will also go like to one-on-ones, prepare promotion plans, I don't know, plan some sprints or stuff like that, and you will be rather like working with multiple different teams, but also with data managers, definitely, yes.
But also maybe data managers, at least a typical data manager, might not have kubectl installed. They might not have Kubernetes access configured, right? So they might not be able to actually log into Kubernetes cluster and check what are the logs there and right what could be happening there. But a data ops person will probably have these things, right?
Probably yes, but also a fun fact: Kubernetes is not that present in the data domain. If you are like in the software engineering side and you are a DevOps, not data ops, then definitely Kubernetes will be your bread and butter. Like every single thing will be on that platform, let's say, because what we are doing essentially, some front end, some APIs. Which is what Kubernetes is suited for. If you're in the data domain, you got like a ton of batch jobs, which is not necessarily the first use case for Kubernetes. It will be most probably rather like ECS, AWS batch, or I don't know, GitLab runners, Jenkins, that sort of thing.
I think you can still run Kubernetes jobs, but yeah, it's not the first choice, right? So sometimes there are simpler services that we can use from AWS or other cloud providers that.
With Kubeflow, obviously you can, but it will, as you said, it won't be the first choice. I guess.
Okay. Yeah, we have a few questions. So one of the questions is, what was your most interesting project and why?
Well, the one I spent the most time on was migrating a lot of workloads, like almost 600, from like old Jenkins servers to GitLab CI. It wasn't the most interesting because of the migration, because migrations are honestly pretty boring. What was interesting was working with like pretty much the whole company at the same time on one project, because everybody and their mothers have had some ETL job somewhere on some Jenkins instance. So that was the fun part, like working with pretty much everybody. But the most maybe not interesting but funny was with debugging, actually. SREs plus contractors plus whoever were trying to move some Kinesis reader from old EC2 machine to Kubernetes, actually, because stream processing is a perfect use case for Kubernetes. Okay, fine. And I guess the count of people who were into that debugging process finally reached like 9 or 10.
Mm-hmm.
Super experienced guys, honestly. And they were just, okay, it's Dockerized, we got the Helm chart, everything is set, service accounts are properly done and deployed and yada, yada, yada. Yet the application just starts and immediately dies out of nowhere. Then I joined that effort. And one of the first questions I asked was like, hey, guys, do we actually know that the library versions on that EC2 machine inside that container are actually the same as the ones we have there? And someone was like, oh, okay, you are a junior in the operation space, you probably don't know how Docker actually works, yada, yada, yada. I was like, okay, maybe I indeed don't. But then we scanned how the Docker file was actually created. It was fetching the requirements txt, and the versions weren't specified there. So out of the sudden, when we just checked the library version, it was the problematic one was psychopg, the Postgres driver, and the whole fix was like 4 characters.
Okay.
It
Yeah, because
took
this
a quarter.
yeah, psychopg relies on a binary, like there is some binary code in Python, right? That you don't see any stack traces. It just dies and kills the entire container, right? Yeah,
The
sounds
problem
like
was that
fun.
the code was prepared to work with, I don't know, version like 2.7 something, and without version being like specified, then if when folks try to run that stuff on Kubernetes, it fetched the latest, and the API changed. Which is the perfect use case. I'm telling everybody when they are asking questions like why we have to use like fixed versions because it's boring, and why we just can't use like any version like latest.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Okay.
exactly why.
That's a good story. So do you have a couple of more minutes?
Sure.
Okay. So last question for today. At the beginning, you told us a story when you worked in analytics and somebody, the management, asked you how confident are you in the results. So how do you usually answer this question?
That I'm as comfy as we get money to check all the edge cases.
Okay.
Because the same manager who asked me that question was the same who like healed me totally from checking every single possible edge case and like error. Because if you are working in like basic research, and by basic I mean rather that's the name, but it implies that it might be simple. It's not. It's like the fundamental research in the academia. Then you basically are receiving the CSV file, and that's it. If you are working in the company, data is flowing constantly. So tracking changes, policy changes, whatever changes, pipeline changes, schema changes, like everything changes constantly, and the failure is the only constant. Like as Werner Vogel said, everything fails all the time. And Vogels is the CTO, I guess, currently also of AWS. So he probably knows what he was talking about. So I remember when I was checking some clickstream data, and I was looking for errors. Like before, like presenting the results, maybe let's check if all things are like set properly. I was like doing that. My manager came in and like, okay, are you done? Like almost. Still, I get some like edge cases in 10,000 records, and he asked like, out of how many? I was like, 400 million. Like, okay, so you are checking like 10,000 records out of 400 million, and you are spending time on that. Congratulations. So like, okay, that's just, it won't be perfect, like never. But definitely is a wise idea to, for instance, if you are working with Airflow, and you are seeing that your pipelines are like all green and so on. So what does it actually mean? That the records were inserted into the given table, or that the network didn't fail as it did for me today? The answer might be sometimes surprising. That's okay. 0 records inserted, job is still green. So that kind of stuff might be checked before presenting some extraordinary results to leadership, because extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof.
That actually happened to me. Green jobs in Airflow with 0 records inserted.
I know that.
Like, I guess everyone had to experience this. Okay. Do you, like, before we finish? Now it's time to wrap up. Before we finish, do you want to? Maybe you forgot to mention something, and you want to bring it up?
Paraphrasing what you said at the very beginning of our talk, like only like 1/2 of the people who are watching are also subscribing. So if you are in that group, in that particular group, like, then don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe. Always wanted to say that, honestly. And and well, that was like super pleasure to be here, and thank you for the invitation, and thank you like all for being here with us in that Friday evening.
Yeah, +1 to everything you said. Yeah, so we should be finishing. So thanks, Tomek, for joining us today. Thanks everyone for joining us today too, for asking questions, and I wish everyone to have a great weekend. So bye, Tomek.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.